Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Hey, you got power, you got internet, you are good. Do you have coffee?
I have coffee too. Life is perfect right now.
Yeah,
you know,
it's right side coffee.
it is. It's you got to wake up on the right side with right side coffee. You can't just have any old coffee.
Yeah. Now, what happened yesterday though when you got up and there was no power? Did you still wake up on the right side to go build a little bonfire outside and get the old kettle and?
Well, the neighborhood loves me doing stuff like that. They love there's Jim again. He's lighting a campfire in his front yard. Yeah, it's out of his coffee.
Rubbing sticks together. Yeah, what the hell is he doing? Bro, my coffee. You want some? Yeah, sit around here. We'll tell stories.
But you know what I learned, Bill, from that whole experience?
What's that?
That we go back to like primitive times when we have none of the accoutrements, as they would say, of the 21st century. When you lose your power,
instincts.
when you lose your internet, I mean, everything stops. Air conditioning, your water pump may not work. Everything, it ends. We are so dependent on all these different things, and when the power hits, the power goes off, you're stuck. You really are.
You get back to basic instincts, primal instincts.
I was thinking if we had an EMP go off over our country and we lost all of our electronics, I don't know what people would do.
Well, actually, there was a study on that. If there was a war and things like that, you had no power, no nothing, communication, a good portion of the population would be dead within 3 days because the mass hysteria, the not knowing what to do, there would be violence, looting, and just stupidity. A lot of stupidity because you have no plan. We would just self-eliminate.
Do we have protection for that? You got to think that the guys in Washington, but then again, maybe I'm giving them far too much credit, come to think of it. But you got to think that the guys at the Pentagon have already thought about stuff like that and have some kind of protection in place.
I got to believe that what the plan is to go around and sweep up the bodies. There's probably a point to where you got to just sit there and say it's too late. Let human instinct and nature take its course. Some people are survivors, but most aren't. They're reliant on the accoutrements of life, the amenities, and the government to hold their hand and walk them down the aisle. I had a boss always say that you can't trust people to do anything. You got to take their hand, hold it, and walk them down the aisle. And perhaps that's a problem in politics. Democrats, to get their way, they know people are this way.
What's the saying? Don't assume, because you make an ass out of you and me. Speaking of assuming, this is a guy who assumed that he was going to be the vice president of the United States. Yeah, he did. Tim Walz, he was being interviewed at Harvard. They had a lecture series at Harvard, and Tim Walz was there, and he talked about why they picked him. Why did they pick me? I'll tell you why they picked me. This is Tim Walz, former presidential a vice presidential candidate. Listen.
Oh, I would. Yes, I said the choice to be on this ticket, the privilege of being on it. When you sign up for this, I'm a team player. I'm with it. And there's folks that I recognize are smarter than me. They analyze this. You put your input in. Running a campaign that had never been run before, 100 days, in the situation we were at, running against a very unusual opponent on the other side. Mm-hmm. And look, my job was to do. Look, I knew I was on the ticket. I would argue because we did a lot of amazing progressive things in Minnesota that improved people's lives. But I also was on the ticket, quite honestly, because I could code talk to white guys watching football, fixing their truck, doing that I could put them at ease. I was the permission structure to say, look, you can do this and vote for this. And you look across those swing states, with the exception of Minnesota, we didn't get enough of those votes.
But you could be giving them permission on TV every day. You could have been messaging that way, and that isn't necessarily how it shook out.
Well, yes, but I also said I understand myself. I said I think I'll give you pretty good stuff, but I'll also give you 10% problematic. And so somebody's got to make the decision here to handle some of this stuff and to make it in. Those are just decisions that were made. And I think after the fact, it is not second guessing or anything. I think it's fair to go back on and look at this. Look, we had the most qualified person who'd run for president in this country's history at the top of the ticket.
Oh, my God. That last line, that's why I played the whole bit. Otherwise, I would have ended it sooner. But that last part of that comment just makes your eyes cross. We had the most qualified person ever to run for the position on the ticket. And I'm thinking, is he for real? Does this guy have a clue what he's talking about? Yeah, and the answer is no, he doesn't. I mean, if you remember when he came out and was introduced to the DNC, he came out and did like a Michael Jackson dance. And I thought, as soon as I saw that, he's just not serious.
Well, that was code, actually, to do that Michael Jackson dance. As he's a stupid white guy. I never got his code. I'm sorry. And I was probably working on the car and had no clue what he was talking about because he didn't know, what I was doing under the hood.
Yeah, he was giving us permission. It's okay to like what Kamala is saying, and you can vote for her because I'm on the ticket, is essentially what he was talking about.
I'm a white guy, and I approved. Well,
Yeah.
you know what? I did learn one thing under the hood. There are two dipsticks in life, the one in my car and him.
Well, the other thing is, how'd that work out, Tim? I mean, not very well.
Well, I think he thinks he's actually going to be.
Yes.
I think he's trying to, tee it up so that he's on the ticket
I
again.
agree. I think he's thinking that he would make a great presidential candidate himself. I don't think Kamala. Do you think Kamala's going to run again? She supposedly spoke yesterday for the first time since she lost the election, and there wasn't any reporting on it. I didn't see any coverage. Maybe I missed it. Maybe it was there, but I'm pretty good at looking for this stuff. This morning, I looked at the news stories, and I didn't see any report. So if he thinks that Kamala is going to be back again, I think he's sorely mistaken.
Well, I think the Democrats are in a sorely need because you got Gavin who thinks he's presidential material, but the voters in California wouldn't have him again as governor, and the candidates they don't want. But Kamala seems to ring with the Democrats there, which is interesting. Hey, one thing that rings with us is when you like and share our program.
So, Bill, who do you think, and this is way out, but who do you think might be a candidate for president on the Democratic ticket in 28?
Sadly, I don't want to believe it. I would think it would be a death march, but I think it's where they're going. There are a lot of people that are embracing socialism, and the socialist queen is AOC, and she's trying to make all the moves. You got to understand, you think you're going to get all these little things and everything that she stands for, and forget biology and science and forget history. We're going to forget about all that. Forget freedom of speech. You're going to lose that too. Everything comes at a price, and national wealth and your personal wealth, they all go the way of the Fagawi if she gets in, because she is a true, admittedly, hardcore socialist. And if you're a Democrat and you say you're a constitutionalist or you're an American, and I'm for democracy, you can't go with AOC. But I think.
I think she's a numbskull too. She really is. If you had a box of rocks over here and AOC over on the other side,
I'm voting for the box of rocks.
Yeah, I am too. Will Cain was talking with Dan Goldman, another terrible representative. Will Cain does an afternoon show on Fox, and Dan Cain just hates Trump for no good reason, and he's a liar. So when you put those two things together, you get today's Democrat. Unfortunately, a Democrat in the House of Representatives. I want you to hear how Goldman went on the show to talk about policy, and as soon as he opened the mic, he started bashing Trump. And listen to what Will Cain had to say.
Well, I don't know whether it's incompetence, cognitive abilities, ignorance, or just plain flat-out lying. But Donald Trump doesn't know that a photo he's showing is photoshopped. He doesn't know that the Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against him. He's got Elon Musk in the Oval Office doing press conferences. He doesn't understand what trade deficits are and is tanking our economy. So you can call it whatever you want, but it's been a pretty disastrous first 100 days.
First of all, I could debate you on each and every one of those things you just laid out, but I don't think you can call it whatever you want. I think that's an incorrect statement, Congressman. I think words have meaning and they matter. And I think you know that. I think we have to be careful with our words, especially if we're not trying to inflame the public, and most certainly if we're trying to arrive at the truth. And after 4 years of having us gaslighted over the competency, the mental acuity of the previous president, it's absurd to question, even if you disagree, Congressman, and clearly you do with much of the president, the competency of the sitting president today. I think the accuracy and truth of those words do matter.
Well, I don't think he's competent, Will. I don't know what to tell you. Whether his cognitive abilities are sufficient to get past the 25th Amendment, we don't know that right now. But I think what is clear is that he has driven our country into a disastrous economy. He has undermining the fundamental rule of law and democracy. He is taking away benefits in order to cut taxes for the rich. I think even you, Will, would have to agree with me that this first 100 days is not at all what he promised the American people.
No, I'm sorry to notify you. I do not agree with you. I think this first 100 days is exactly what he promised the American people, and more importantly, exactly what was voted on by the American people.
Really?
But,
I think the American people thought that he was going to lower costs, not raise them.
Congressman,
you
first
agree
of
with
all,
me on that?
He talked about bringing tariffs in for 40 years. He did lower. Inflation is down. The stock market has been on a roller coaster because of tariffs, and it has never been promised to be an overnight solution. It is a long-term play to reorganize the global economy to bring manufacturing back to America. It's fair to you to point out that it's going to be rocky in the beginning. That's fair. But I would hope that I'm not the only person trying to have a fair conversation here. I have here a list of topics that I thought maybe you'd be interested in talking about. I looked at your feed. You have concerns about potential cuts to Medicare, Medicaid. You have potential concerns about cuts to FEMA. But you have chosen to come here with me today, and I'm disappointed in this. I'm being honest with you, Congressman, and talked about the 25th Amendment. There's a difference between you and I disagreeing, and there's a difference between you disagreeing with the president and what the minority leader and you have now just done. And you suggested to the American people, because you disagree, which you have an American right to do, that somehow all of a sudden he needs to see the 25th Amendment invoked on the President of the United States. I'm not confident we're off to a productive conversation on potential cuts to FEMA.
Wow.
Yeah, so get the hell out of here.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
Yeah.
And that's the last line he didn't put in there. But you know what? I agree with him.
Yeah, I do
How
too.
dare them talk about this economy?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about Dan Goldman, all right? Dan Goldman's representative, right? You think, oh, well, he has. Dan Goldman is one of the heirs to Levi Strauss. Levi jeans, that's the guy. I also think, and I could be wrong, but you may have heard of, I think it's Goldman Sachs. I think he's the Goldman or his family.
So he's money.
Yeah. The guy has come from a lot of money, and so he's had privilege. A lot of people who have privilege don't do a lot of serious thinking. They really don't. I don't mean to group them all together, but, when a guy comes up from nothing, from literally nothing, and makes something of himself, he has to pay attention to the world all the way along that journey. He has to, if you start with nothing and you end up being a multimillionaire, you had to think about every possibility all the way along that journey to success. You had to, or you wouldn't succeed. But when you're born with a silver spoon and somebody comes along and dumps it in your lap, and you haven't had to think about anything but maybe where the next meal's coming from. What will I have? I think I'll have some Grey Poupon with that. Yes, that is a life of privilege, and you don't do a lot of thinking behind it. And I think there's an example right there. And we talked about AOC. She pretends to be coming from, the people. She, I think, was brought up in Westchester County. And if you're not familiar with New York, and I worked there, Westchester County is the affluent suburbs of New York City. I mean, you can live in Manhattan. A lot of people who have money will live in apartments and condos in Manhattan. But if you have a family and you want to grow up in a normal environment, you move to the suburbs. Now, a lot of them move out to Long Island, and the highway systems and the rail systems have improved over the years. A lot of people live out in Long Island, but the real affluent, I'm talking about the big mansions, the beautiful homes, that's in Westchester. That's in Westchester, and that's where she's from. So when you hear her getting down with the cause, they have no experience at that. Anyway, and yes, Bill, I think she is going to be a serious contender for that position, the presidency.
And there's a lot of people that are going to like what she has to say. And, I promise to give you this, and I promise to give you that, and it's going to be this. But, when you get into a social system, life under this mushroom, all of a sudden, it's going to be, you're going to get watered down grape juice. You're not going to be drinking wine. It's going to be watered down with a hint of grape juice in it that you can't even taste. It's going to be so distorted. What you're going to get is not what you
are paying for.
Thinking.
Yeah. The Republicans, on the other hand, let's think about what they might have. Let's say, hypothetically, they can't get a third term, or as some would believe, a fourth term for Trump. Let's say that's just not a possibility because they can't change the laws. They still have Marco Rubio. They still have J.D. Vance. They have a lot of good, strong people in the background who might be candidates. I think of Marco Rubio is incredibly articulate. He's bilingual. When he goes down and speaks in South America and Central America to all those leaders like he has recently, he goes down and speaks Spanish. That's a big advantage. There's no interpreter standing between him and the leaders. He understands what's going on, and he's very, very smart.
That is why the Democrats, they've got nothing, but they're trying to derail. They want to derail the tariffs. And, there were stupid Republicans along for the ride going, yeah, these tariffs aren't working. Well, I'm sorry. You go to the doctor because you got the flu. Okay, here's your medicine. Take your medicine. You take one pill and you think you're done. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. Sometimes after you go see the doctor, it gets worse before it gets better. Same thing with the economy, and how dare you sit there and say, democracy, we're going to go deeper in debt. The Democrats have squandered for the past, I don't know how many years, so much money. We're trillions of dollars in debt. We used to carry debt that was in
And you know what their answer is, Bill? Their answer is, let's keep it going. Let's not stop that train, that squandering train. Let's just keep throwing that money away.
So money's not real, is what you're telling me?
I'm telling you, they think it's not real. I think it's real.
That they've taken away my life, my retirement.
Yep.
They're taking your retirement. They're taking our kids' future. They can't buy a home anymore. The American dream, they tout the American dream, but they've taken it and squandered it. But they're sitting there living high off the hog in their little ivory towers and their little golden seat to go, no, I vote aye because I get some of this. And, well, we're going to have to raise taxes to pay for it. And let's go ahead and let's extend the debt some more. More debt. Let's get over this.
Well, if you vote a Democrat in 28, you're going to see all of the good that Trump has done reversed in the snap of a finger. And you're going to say, well, how do you know, Jim? I'll tell you how I know, because that's what Biden did. Biden wasn't in office a week, and he undid all of the good that Trump did, building the wall, keeping us secure. All those things, the pipeline with the Keystone pipeline coming down from Canada, closed that thing up, shut down oil exploration in our country. The guy was disastrous to this country. Yet there were some clowns who voted for jumping Joe Biden. And then he ended up, shaking hands with thin air, walking off the stage, not knowing where to leave. The guy was a disaster. And when I saw Terry Moran Terry Moran interviewed the president. I haven't got any cuts from it. You'll be happy to hear because it's infuriating. Terry Moran is a leftist loon reporter for ABC, and he got an interview. Trump is not afraid to sit down with his enemy, and he does it all the time. BC, I think, welcomes the opportunity to go after them, too, and he does. Moran was sitting there in this interview with President Trump yesterday talking about the tattoo on the hand of this guy Garcia, who's down in El Salvador. The tattoo is code. Every knuckle is a code for an initial, MS13. 4 knuckles, 4 characters that represent MS13, MS13. Terry Moran said, "Oh, I was photoshopped." I mean, this Terry Moran is a moron, and that's an intentional pun. He's a moron.
Where's his proof?
Well, he had these. That's the whole thing, Bill. The left doesn't need proof. You know, there was a time when you and I were in day-to-day broadcasting. If you had a news department at your station, they had people who had, before you put a story on the air, you had to make damn sure you had your facts straight. Not anymore. Democrats will put hearsay on all the time. Reliable sources, or a source who remains anonymous. Anonymous sources said, an unnamed source said, I mean, they do this all the time. And, we've become used to it as a public. We go, okay, it was a reliable source. It had to be important.
Yeah.
No. Sometimes, many times, these reporters make this stuff up out of thin air. Hey, what do you want to talk about? I heard a story the other day at a press conference. They were doing an interview asking a question of Caroline Levitt. And one of the reporters said, well, it was reported this morning that so-and-so did such and such. And nobody had heard anything like that from anyone anywhere. But this reporter decided out of thin air to say, well, it was reported this morning that there was no report that came out in the morning. He just figured that he'd make it up and no one would question him. But unfortunately, at this press conference, somebody did. I think it was Caroline Levitt. Where'd you get that report? It's not out. We didn't issue a report like that. We haven't heard something like that. And if it happened, we'd know. They do this all the time, folks. You're being gaslit by our own media every single day. Every day you go up and turn your TV on and sit back to watch the news, and you trust that what you're hearing is honest, you're making a mistake. You got to question everything nowadays. Everything. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to agree with Bill. You don't have to agree with anybody, but you come to your own conclusion. But you have to think. Don't just accept stuff on face value. That's the problem we have nowadays. We're not thinking for ourselves anymore. I know I'll get off the soapbox now, so I'll give you a chance to comment.
No, that's all right. But back to the previous point. When they give a source, who is this source? It all comes from the windmills of their mind, which is splintered right now. Anyway. Well, but we talked about
Bill. They have no problem, Bill. The media has no problem lying nowadays.
No, they don't. And the whole world and the economy is fragile. I'm thinking of the oil industry right now, and I'm thinking, we're happy with Trump because he gets the prices down. Drill, baby, drill. But does anybody really know the fat cats, the real guys behind the oil companies, the real oligarchs there?
And that's an interesting point. Don't trust either side just because you happen to think one side's better than the other. Question everything.
Here's the problem with the oil industry, because you sit there, we're producing and drilling more, and there's a number that they can't go below in the cost per barrel. The more we drill, the lower that cost goes. Great for us, but these hierarchy guys they're covered on both ends, whether the oil is drilled here or the oil is drilled overseas. They don't care as long as they get their money. They don't care about if you watch Landman. They don't care about the guy out there drilling the well. I do. You do. You want that price down. When it's down at $50 a barrel, okay, they can still make money, but they're not going to be redoing their rigs or anything like that because the big guys, the guys you don't see and don't know who they are, they're not getting their money. They want to make over $60, $100 a barrel. Remember when it got that way? But it was overseas.
Yeah.
But they loved it. We were not cranking out the oil. Somebody was. We've got a plentiful supply, and I don't know how you fix that. But the one thing I do know, we shouldn't be dependent on foreign oil. And
Biden didn't replenish our reserves when he drained our
and
reserves.
That has to be done.
Yeah, I think it's already started, Bill. I think Trump, one of the first things he did was start to fill it back up again. But Biden, he had no problem draining our oil reserves. You're saying, well, what do we need that for? Let me tell you what we really have the oil reserves for. Our military. Because when push comes to shove, if we're not producing any more oil and they've cut us off and you and I can't go get gas, we still have to rely on somebody protecting us while we try to get back on our feet. And we can't do it without oil. And if you don't believe that's the case, I point to Germany at the end of World War II. They had a really strong army, but they ran out of oil.
They ran out of gas. No gas to run the tanks.
And that was oil, it.
Yes.
Yep.
And Biden took our reserve. Oh, I'll keep these gas prices down. Look what old Joe did. I sold off some of the reserve to China.
That's
and
true.
We'll buy it back at a cheaper rate. No, we never could do that. So they went empty, and then after we drained it all, well, what happened to those low gas prices? They got back up into the $4 and $5 a gallon range, and that was probably going to trip into the 9, 10, $11 range, which pushes his Green Deal of the battery-driven cars. But that's not the entire answer yet. We're hooked on oil for a long time because everything that we use has oil somehow tied to it.
It's amazing, Bill. When you said that last part there, it's true. People don't realize some things you wouldn't even imagine have any connection to oil are actually made with oil. Some cloths that we use have a base in oil. I mean, they make synthetic everything, and usually the base of synthetic everything is petroleum.
Mm-hmm.
So you take it out of our economy, we're screwed.
Yeah, we probably need to break up the big oil companies and get it down to, more independent, more privatized. Somehow.
They tried that, Bill, back in the early 20s with J.D. Rockefeller. Maybe it was back in the early teens of the 20th century. He had Standard Oil. He owned all of the oil in the United States, and they came in and said, you have a monopoly, you got to break it up. So all of a sudden you started getting Sohio, Standard Oil of Ohio. You started getting different companies that were
variations of the same,
but they weren't connected to Rockefeller anymore. They were broken up. It was like what they did to the Bell telephone system. For the longest time in our country, Bell Telephone had a monopoly on the whole system. They were Bell. That was the company that ran our phone system. Then they came along and said, you're a monopoly, and they made all these baby bells, they call them, all around, Southern Bell, Northern Bell, and they were supposedly all independent, but offered the same services. And if they go after, I would think that before you do anything right now, you got to get our fuel system back in order. It's been tampered
get it
with.
Back in order, but we got to take control to where that money situation of the cost per barrel. I think it's great if we can get the cost down, but somebody somewhere doesn't get quite the money they think they should be getting, and they want to keep that thing above 50, actually above 60. Sweet spot's probably somewhere around $65 to $70 a barrel for them, not really for us.
Well, there's a 5-letter word that I think is the key here. It's called greed. What amazes me is there's some
I gotta
people.
look that word up.
Yeah, there are some people who have so much money, and you think, well, they've got to be satisfied, and you find out they're not, and you find out that they're really. It's not the money that they're really concerned about; it's the game. They like winning at the game, and the proof of their success is the more money they grab for themselves. You say, well, how would someone need to have a bigger company? He's already worth $10 billion. It's because of the game. They like the process. And we're in interesting times, but we have to get our country back in order. That's what Trump is doing right now, much to the chagrin of some of these globalists.
Yeah.
I heard somebody say, and it's true, Bill, Trump has never been in a more dangerous situation physically than right now.
His life, his family's life is all in jeopardy. And I've seen where they're targeting now with articles. Melania, now, the bill that she, the deep fake bill that she passed historically well the other day. And that's where somebody can take a picture of Jim Harrington and have him naked with a harem of women. And Jim, that never happened, but according to, whoever put that thing together, it did,
Well, I'm not too concerned about it. I don't think it would attract much attention. I'm just saying.
See the pictures.
But you know what's interesting? They're going after Melania, and they're ignoring Michelle. They still talk about Michelle Obama like she's special, and she made a comment a couple of days ago. Did you hear about the comment she made? I haven't got the audio, but she essentially said something along the lines, well, as a black man, and it was like, whoa. And she didn't correct herself. She said something like that. And I thought,
she said a lot of things, and she's talking about, she was distinguishing herself as somebody of importance. Now, I don't know, a lot of Secret Service, have been removed from some of the past administration. But Michelle was going, oh, yes, when I travel with a 24-car motorcade because I'm Michelle Obama. And I thought,
yeah, that's right.
Who cares?
She said that. I'm looking as we speak for the audio, but I can't find it. But she doesn't even look like she did when she was First Lady. When she was First Lady, there was a softness to her. And
she's letting it all hang out.
Oh, my God. There's a look about her right now that is it's a lot more, it's tougher. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. And she talks like she's down with the cause. She's being picked on. She's being humiliated. I'm thinking, you got to be kidding, lady.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is she teeing up the ball to do a run?
No, I think that there's more to her story than we're not being told. I think there's an element of dishonesty in that whole administration, the Obama administration, that if she were to run again, it would be exposed. And I think they'll do a lot of things, but they don't want to dance in that ballroom, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to be specific about it. Yeah. If you have questions as to what I'm talking about, do a little research. Yeah, do a little research on Michelle Obama. Tell you what, the best way of, if I can find the audio from Joan Rivers in the next few minutes, I'll play it for you. And that'll give you an idea pretty specifically about what I'm talking about. I mean, she was considered as the savior of the Democratic Party as recently as this past election cycle. They were thinking before they went with Kamala that maybe we can go with Michelle. Remember that? Can we go with Michelle? Mm-hmm. Or do you think Hillary might come back? Those were the people they were talking about. And for a while, few days, it sounded like Michelle was going to make a move. And then it kind of disappeared. She didn't like politics or something like that, and she dropped out. She was
a private person. She wasn't private when she was in the White House. I think that I don't know that America is ready, for Michelle to come out of the closet, and it's because I think it would have been better, to be honest, when they came in, they would have just come clean at that time.
Yeah. Well, I was telling you about that piece of audio from Joan Rivers about 2 weeks before Joan Rivers died. She was I thought she was funny. I liked Joan Rivers. She was a classic.
She was clever.
She was going to have some very minor surgery done at a surgical clinic in New York by supposedly by some very talented doctors. It was supposed to be rather routine. And all of a sudden she had a crisis and died in that clinic. She should have been doing the surgery in a hospital. People have said if she did it in the hospital where there were resources available, they might have been able to save her. But because it was so routine, so easy, and she was led to believe by her doctors, there's nothing to worry about here. This will take 15 minutes. You'll be in and out, and that'll be it. She trusted the doctors, and she died. But 2 weeks before, she was walking into her apartment building in Manhattan, and a reporter asked her this.
Mr. Rivers, how are you? You made a ton of news officiating the wedding in New York yesterday. Is this like a new cottage career move for you?
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
And I should do very well because I don't charge.
And do you think that the United States will see the first gay president or the first woman president?
We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down.
Got it.
You know Michelle is a trans.
I'm sorry, she's a what?
A transgender. We all know.
Oh my gosh.
Oh gosh. It's okay. She does this.
And then she walked into the building, and that was the end of that conversation. Joan Rivers, she very matter-of-factly said, we have it with Obama, I mean, the first gay president. Mm-hmm. And then she said she volunteered, and, Michelle's a tranny. And that was like, what?
I think she thought she was safe saying that. America trusted her. She threw things out there, but she thought she was safe. And somebody in the Democratic Party said, "We're not safe with this. We got to shut her up right now.
She's going to ruin a lot for a lot of people. We got to stop this now." Which is sad because she was a funny lady and she didn't deserve what happened to her.
And speaking of people being silenced, I mean, you had. A couple of people come forward from the Epstein files, and they ended up losing their lives. They came forward and said, "I am not suicidal." Somebody else came out the other day and did a post. The gentleman that sits there and does all the gotcha videos, the bombshell videos, James O'Keefe.
Oh,
he did a cryptic post.
I saw that too. Yeah, James O'Keefe. In case you don't know, he was the founder of a company called Project Veritas. Mm-hmm. And then he had a dispute with them, and he left. He left Project Veritas, went off on his own, and he started something called, I guess, O'Keefe Media Group or something like that.
O'Keefe
OMG
Media.
Yeah, and yesterday he releases this video. He's seated on a bench outside of what apparently is his office building, and it's a bit cryptic. Listen.
I'm going dark. I'm not suicidal. Pray for me. This one scares me, guys.
And he walks into his office. He says, "I'm going dark. I'm not suicidal. This one scares me. Pray for me."
If you read between the lines, he did a bombshell thing the other day that exposed a lot. But what does he have on somebody, somewhere, somehow, a candid video, and he's going, people got to see it, but this is going to get me killed?
Well, he dabbles in an area that very few people dabble in because it's so darn dangerous. Mm-hmm. He gets people in the most sensitive situations to spill their guts. And if he got somebody in a top position, let's say, to open their mouth, he may be in a dangerous position right now.
Yeah. See, I can't even speculate. Now, I would say, something that's totally unrelated, but maybe so. Maybe he's got some information there, but, we'll speculate a little bit. Take the coronavirus. Well, that started at a lab in Wuhan, but there is evidence that it started here in the United States and that we engineered it. What say that they sat there and said, we got to derail the Trump train, so they introduced a virus, pinned it on China, and it released, and, all of a sudden, as this playbook would fold out, not everybody got to vote. Now, maybe they did something to kind of dance with the numbers as well. Hillary thinking she had this in the bag because, this was before Hillary. But Biden would have had it in the bag because if we didn't get all the votes in, they manipulated the votes, and it was all the virus, and they used that virus against Trump in more ways than one.
I think that there are some people in our country who are so wealthy, so powerful, that they feel because of this wealth that nothing can touch them. Seriously. I think that there's a barrier between us and them. And
how big is that barrier?
Well, that's just it. I think O'Keefe right now, he may have figured out a way to get through that barrier, and he put himself in a dangerous situation. I wouldn't want to be in his position.
All right, let me ask you this. He's in that position. We've gotten valuable information from him. And so he comes out today and goes, the other day, I am not suicidal. And then all of a sudden, we next read about his death, apparently by suicide. What happened?
Well, in our country, they'll try to sell it, just like they've tried to sell and normalize Epstein. Everybody now refers to Epstein as Epstein, who committed suicide in prison. They write this like it's a matter of fact. That you shouldn't do any investigation into it right now because we've all determined here in this elitist room that we call journalism that Epstein died from a self-inflicted whatever. He hung himself in his bed. In his cell. Never mind the fact, like we've said before, that his prison guards, who were supposed to watch him 24/7, decided to take a coffee break. Oh, we had to walk away and get some coffee. No, during that time, nobody was paying attention. I don't know where he got those sheets. I don't know how he did that. Wow, that's amazing, isn't it? Never mind the fact that even, I think, Epstein implied that he wasn't suicidal.
Yeah. So they must have handed him the sheets and said, here, could you make your bed? Just take the dirty sheets, crumple them up, and stick them under the door. Is that what they did?
Hey, your guess is as good as mine. Hey, before we go any further, we should also point out at this point, if you like our show, please like and share. Now, talking about Epstein, Bill, James Comer. I like James Comer. He's probably a great guy. I'd love to sit down, have coffee with him, hear the stories. But he's always going on television and telling us about, woulda, coulda, shoulda, and we're really close, and we're going to get him now. And then nothing happens. Literally nothing happens. He will get on all the talk shows, Maria Bartiromo, Will Cain. He'll get on every show he can get on, and he'll be talking about we're on the verge of breaking it wide open. And then nothing ever happens. Nothing. But anyway, he was talking about the Epstein files. Listen.
So our task force is, trying to reach out and question the bureaucrats, figure out which bureaucrat didn't comply with the orders. Same thing happened with the Epstein files when Pam Bondi thought she was releasing the Epstein files. It really wasn't the Epstein files, obviously.
You're looking at these documents going, these aren't all the Epstein files. There were flight logs, there were names and victims' names, and we're going, where's the rest of the stuff?
So that task force is kind of working on very hard behind the scenes to identify which bureaucracies and which bureaucrats are not complying with the president's orders. I heard that 10,000 times over the past 2 years. Well, we can't turn that over. There's an ongoing investigation. We're hearing that with the Epstein files now in this administration. So
who's telling you that?
Well, that's what when we request information, if they don't provide it, that's what they say. There's an ongoing investigation.
Some liaison to Congress tells you that?
Well, whoever replies to our letter or subpoena, that's what they say. There's an ongoing investigation.
So even now they're citing that
we've been real careful to try to let, some of these cabinet officials get established and things like that. The task force has asked for, the Epstein list and things like that, and that's been the reply thus far, but they still say we're going to release it. We're in the process of releasing it. We just got to make sure nothing is released that compromises the ongoing investigation.
Do you think we now have all the JFK files, or they're in the process of being posted and so on?
Well, I would say that we've probably gotten pretty much what we're going to get. The question I have is, were there documents that have disappeared over the last 4 decades? And that's probably a possibility. I find it hard to believe that if the government was involved in some type of role in the Kennedy assassination, that they would say, okay, let's keep this file in this safe here. And, I would think that file would disappear very quickly.
Well, I've said much the same about the Epstein files. Certainly, if there are bad actors, they weren't holding the documents under a glass dome waiting for Trump to be reelected so that they could be released.
The thing that worries me about the Epstein files, and I've read a lot about it, like most Americans have, is, was our government involved in this? Were they potentially blackmailing some of the most influential people in the United States or in the world? If you go into, Britain and other countries where we know there were very high profile people that were going to the Epstein Island or whatever you want to call it. And if that was the case, I find it hard to believe that any type of evidence of that would still be in existence.
Including videos.
We know
there were videos.
I think at the very least, there are 2 questions most Americans have. Who was on the list? And did our government, play any role in evaluating that or spying on that, or were they involved in any type of, blackmail attempts or anything to get information? Enough time has passed, but we're still battling that battle.
James Comer talking about Epstein and the government right now and the corruption. I was thinking as that was running, let's think for a second about what Trump is really facing right now. He's facing a deep state consisting of people who can control the judiciary. I have stories that we haven't even gotten to yet about more judges who have come out in the last 10 hours and thrown more roadblocks in the path of the administration's efforts to remove the criminals from our country. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why? We talk about congressmen who will go like James Comer on television in front of a microphone and talk about all these things that have to be done. They know they have to do these things, and then they don't do it. They don't vote for it. They don't do it. They go have lunch. There are so many things, Bill. The simple thing of Congress getting together, because we have the majority now, and saying, okay, we're going to put a rule together that's going to limit the jurisdiction of these federal district judges. We can do that because we're Congress. We're going to do that this afternoon because it's affecting our country now. The Democrats, Bill, would do it this afternoon. They would impeach a president as quickly as in an afternoon because they did it.
And they want to do it now. They're teeing up that golf ball for this shot.
Yeah, I know. But the thing is, the Republicans, you have to ask yourself, why do they drag their feet? Is there corruption? Is this incestuous, vile corruption in both parties? And is it just a facade that we're seeing? All these people speaking, we keep expecting every day a revelation, honesty, justice. Nothing happens.
Well, think about what you just said. Is it a facade? I've wondered that. It's all a crap show that we see. I think Trump is the exception. We put him there, and he's trying to do stuff, but he's getting attacked from both sides. And into the previous interview, these things get there, and we ask for it, but then we've got to make sure it's properly vetted before we release anything on to protect everyone. It's like there's a gatekeeper. So does hell have a gatekeeper to keep you from seeing who the devil really is? You know, that maybe that's the person that releases all that. The Kennedy files, the Epstein files, the what files, this file.
When we started to question what's going on in our country a few years ago, a lot of us, we were warned, don't be too anxious and don't expect quick changes, because whatever has got control in D.C. it's not superficial. It's not a surface thing. It has got deep, deep roots. Think of it as an old tree. You know, it's got deep roots, and you can't see those roots, but they're everywhere. And that's what Trump is fighting right now. You're right. Dan Goldman, you have to ask yourself, you're a multimillionaire, maybe a multi-billionaire. You don't need to be a doofus going after the president. Or maybe he does. Maybe his family has done corrupt things with their money. I'm just saying, possibly there's a reason for him being an attack dog like he is, for no good reason.
Well, there's craziness everywhere. Remember the guy or the gal, whatever, that did the firebombing 2 Tesla Cybertrucks and charging stations in Kansas City? Mm-hmm. You know, is behind bars now. Apparently, a liberal judge has ordered that whatever be released because they need their transgender affirming medications. What?
Yeah. Well, let me see what they got. I got that story right here. An outrageous travesty of justice occurred in Missouri recently that could cause millions of Americans to lose faith in the criminal justice system. Wednesday, a radical judge ordered a deranged leftist credibly accused in federal court of firebombing 2 Tesla Cybertrucks. That's got to be billed like $150,000 worth of damage.
More than that, but yeah.
Yeah, and charging stations in Kansas City to be released from prison. He was released April 24th. United States Magistrate Judge Jessica Hedges ruled that it was wrong to hold 19-year-old Owens McIntyre behind bars before trial for his alleged crimes after agreeing with the defense's desperate plea for mercy. You know, I got to remind people of something. They will throw out this, especially nowadays. They'll say, this 19-year-old boy. They'll make it sound like, oh, he's an innocent 19-year-old. He couldn't possibly have known what he was doing. But I want to remind you that we draft people into the military and send them out to war when they're, 18? On a regular basis. And we know what we're doing when we do that. So if you're at 18 years old and you're smart enough to go out and competent enough to go out and fight in a major war that's a very adult action, when you're 19, you damn well know what you're doing.
I forget the name of the guy that was just, they demanded his release and got out, and the young guy, because he was detained to, I guess, go to Salvador, but they sat there and they got him out, and the guy walks out, and he's got his hands up doing the peace sign like he's a dictator that was in prison coming out, doing this, and the people are doing it back, and I'm like going, there's
making fools of our judicial system. And
yes.
By the way, Bill, that's what's happening right now with all of these judges. All of these rulings that have come out in the past, I guess, couple of months. This is a concerted effort. It's a conscious, deliberate effort on the part of the left to attack us using the judiciary.
But it's going on all over the world. It's not just here. So when we say the left, there is an undertow, a wicked undertow in the current of life that's evil, and it's rearing its ugly head all over the place, but especially in, the symbol of democracy, the United States. They have to take us down, because if they take us down, they win everywhere. And so we're fighting the good fight. We fight the good fight by doing this podcast. You fight the good fight by listening. You fight the good fight by voting. You fight the good fight by making your voice known. Speaking of making your voice known, do remember to always like and share each and every show. We'd appreciate it.
We talked about Judges, Bill. Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, stacked, by the way, filled with leftist judges. They voted to keep a block on the Department of Governmental, efficiency? Is that what DOGE stands for? They can't look at the Social Security data. This is, and you say, well, what difference does that make? Well, it completely slows down the entire process of examining a department. The Richmond, Virginia-based Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals on Wednesday voted 9-6 to keep the block on DOGE's access to Social Security data. The court's entire slate of judges weighed in on Wednesday. Chief Judge Diaz, an Obama appointee, Judge King, a Clinton appointee, Judge Gregory, a Clinton appointee, Judge Wynn, an Obama appointee, Judge Thacker, an Obama appointee, Judge Harris, an Obama appointee, Judge Haytens, a Biden appointee, Judge Benjamin, a Biden appointee, and Judge Berner, a Biden appointee, voted to deny the motion to stay. The judges who voted for the removal, right, to give it access to DOGE was a Judge Wilkinson, a Reagan appointee, Judge Niemeyer, a George H.W. Bush appointee, Judge A.G., a George W. Bush appointee, Judge Richardson, a Trump appointee, Judge Quintenbaum, a Trump appointee, and Judge Rushing, a Trump appointee. Do you see anything in that list of judges that differentiates them? The majority, Democrats, all voted in lockstep. The minority, conservatives, voted to give access to DOGE. This is what we're fighting right now in our country. There is a constitutional crisis right now. Now, we mentioned habeas corpus yesterday in our show. Last night, I was watching an interview with President Trump, and he implied that he's ready to put a stay on habeas corpus. And I thought, well, maybe he's listening to my show. I don't know. But it's a coincidence that we brought it up yesterday, and here he was saying he might, put a stay on habeas corpus. You're saying, well, what does that mean? Again, a reminder. What it means is that if you are required to stand in front of a judge at a hearing to plead your case, that requirement will be removed when it comes to criminals from out of this country. That's right. If you are a criminal in this country, you came here illegally, you're not going to have the due process they keep talking about. I hear reporters all the time, well, don't you think he deserves due process? He should come back for due process, meaning the guy in El Salvador. Hey, he's not required to get due process. He's not a citizen. He's not a citizen of this country. Well, every person should be given due process. No, they should be treated with dignity and respect and sent back to their home. This is Tom Homan talking about due process. Listen.
On Friday, a federal judge who was appointed by President Trump said a 2-year-old American citizen child had been sent to Honduras with the mother who was deported. But the judge said, quote, there was no meaningful process. So, again, this is another similar situation and dynamic. Shouldn't there be special care when these deportation cases involve small American-born children?
Well, first of all, I disagree with the judge. There was due process. That female had due process at great taxpayer expense and was ordered by an immigration judge after those hearings. So she had due process. Again, this is parenting 101. And you can decide to take that child with you, or you can decide to leave the child here with a relative or another spouse. Having a U.S. citizen child doesn't make you immune from our laws of the country. American families get separated every day by law enforcement. Thousands of times a day when a parent gets put in jail, the child can't go with them. If you're an illegal alien, come to this country, and you decide to have a U.S. citizen child, that's on you. You put yourself in that position.
Well, when it came to this particular case, you just pointed out that they could have made arrangements. The father tried, actually, to make arrangements, as we understand it through our reporting. But he and the mother, who were separated since she was in detention after showing up for her appointment, was only allowed a very brief phone call. The father tried to petition to get the child handed over to an American citizen relative. So the mother had to make this decision and took the child with her. It just seems like there could be some more time frame here around due process allowed. That's what the judge is saying there should have been more of a process here.
There was due process. The two-year-old baby was left with the mother because the mother signed a document requesting her 2-year-old baby go with her. That's the parent's decision. I don't think the judge knows specifics of this case. The 2-year-old went with the mom. The mom signed a paper saying, "I want my 2-year-old to go with me." That's a parent's decision. It's not a government decision. It's a parent's decision.
The father wrote a note. Anyhow, we have to leave it there. Director, thank you for your time today.
Unbelievable. We have some of the nastiest and dumbest journalists on the planet in our country right now. I'm not saying they aren't that way in England and France and some other countries too, but we got our share of really numbskulls who don't. They think they had a gotcha. Don't you think he deserves due process? I mean, the mother. The baby was an American citizen. Well, you could have made arrangements to leave the baby if you wanted to. If the baby was an American citizen, but it doesn't mean that the mother, gets to stay.
It's just a wedge they're trying to do to get their foot in the door, to grab more time, and to kick down the door, kick it open. The fact is, Holman's right, is that it goes to the mother because in a custody situation, the dad, whether, dad on paper, whether it's his biological kid or not, doesn't matter. The woman, the mother, the madre, has the decision, final say in that child. She goes, "No, my child's going with me. I'll take care of it there." Child's going with her. Doesn't matter unless that woman is not capable of making a decision.
Well, Holman is a pretty sharp guy, and what he said was absolutely correct. And he doesn't give a lot of room to these journalists. Some people, I guess, career politicians, they'll defer to these journalists. Well, you could be right. Holman doesn't do that. If he said if the parent wants to leave the baby here, the baby's an American citizen, make arrangements, the parent can do that. But the parent's going back. Because the parent is here illegally.
The baby is going to be an American citizen no matter what. If they're an American citizen, they are. So let's say that they're there until they're 18 and they go, "You know what? I want to go to America." Guess what? They cut in front of the line because they are a citizen. They're coming.
Exactly.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So
we're not denying the child his American citizenship. But we are saying to the mother, you are not an American and you are here violating our laws. You're going back.
Yeah, and, that dad's got to be careful because he's making noise. Is he here illegally?
I'm sure he's not talking too much about that. You see what happened yesterday? The Senate vote to eliminate Trump's tariffs failed. This is the one we talked about yesterday when Rand Paul came out. The headline was, "Rand Paul has the 5 votes necessary to defeat Trump's tariffs in the Senate." That was a headline yesterday. And everybody went, ooh. Well, now for the rest of the story. The Democrat and Rhino effort to blow up Trump's global tariffs suffered an embarrassing failure in the Senate last night after two senators failed to show up. You're saying, well, what's that all about? It says Democrats ran into attendance problems. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island was absent. Ooh. Along with Senator Mitch McConnell, an untrustworthy rhino, if there ever was one. They didn't show up, and all that was left to vote against it was Rand Paul of Kentucky, Susan Collins of Maine, these are amazing, and Lisa Murkowski of Alaska.
What were they voting over?
They were trying to block the tariff, Trump's tariff regulation, including those on America's top adversary, China. They wanted to essentially crush Trump's tariff deal and do so in Congress. And
news update.
Pardon?
News update.
What?
China caved on the tariffs, the 125 on the major U.S.
And I'll bet you they did it. I'll bet you they caved after that vote.
Actually, it was before.
Really?
It came in late in the day yesterday, but I heard about it. I was going, well, that's a good thing, because Trump's administration said, you don't have the gravitas to maintain your position. You're going to fail. China looked at it and said, they're right. We're not going to do it. Now, and I'm sure that Mitch McConnell said, you know what, I'm just not going to save face, because Trump is right. His tariff war is winning. Case in point, $16 billion added from just the border tariffs in April, and they didn't kick in until about mid-April. So that's a hell of a statement there. The tariff war is winning, and manufacturing is getting set to go about. So what you're hearing in negative news is driven by the left, and the nattering, to quote Spiro Agnew, the nattering nabobs of negativism. Nattering nabobs of negative.
Say that
now
fast.
I can't even say it. See, I can say it once, but now I can't say it again.
Say that 5 times fast. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, the nattering nabobs of negativity. We'll change the word.
Okay.
But either way, and that's what they are. You know, they're just throwing stuff out there to trip and derail, because they're little crybabies. They want it their way, and they want to spend that money and run up that deficit. You know, and Trump, in his wisdom here, he's going to actually get the debt down. It's not going to happen overnight, and but it would be nice to get it out of the trillions. You know, we have. When I heard earlier in the show Dan Goldman talk about incompetence and how he was thinking of invoking the 25th Amendment against President Trump, who I don't think has been a sharper president in the White House in decades. And this Goldman's trying to make it sound like that Trump has got issues. And you look at what we had for the last 4 years, that truly mentally handicapped president who was lost in his own mind, who was saying things and mumbling and would give you half an answer and then go into well, I don't know. Well, I mean, it was embarrassing on the world stage. And, don't think for 1 second our enemies didn't see that and know what was going on. Absolutely. Think they knew, hey, this country has never been more ripe for the pickings than it is right now. They have a doofus in the presidency, in the Oval Office. We can do just about anything we want to. Russia did. They went to war with no consequences, they thought. Mm-hmm. So, hey, Marco Rubio was speaking with the president yesterday at a meeting in the Oval Office, and he said something I thought was interesting about the State Department during Biden's administration having dossiers on censorship of American citizens. Listen to this.
Something else we got out of the business of, wasn't widely reported, or maybe it was. We had an office in the Department of State whose job it was to censor Americans. And by the way, I'm not going to say who it is. I'll leave it up to them. There's at least one person at this table today who had a dossier in that building of social media posts to identify them as purveyors of disinformation. We have these dossiers. We are going to be turning those over to these individuals.
Me or Elon? We can follow up on the media story.
Well, we are going to turn over these dossiers to the individuals, and they'll decide whether they want to disclose it or not. But just think about the Department of State of the United States had set up an office to monitor the social media posts and commentary of American citizens to identify them as vectors of disinformation, when we know that the best way to combat disinformation is freedom of speech and transparency. And so that's what we're going to be in the business of doing. We're not going to have an office that does that.
Of course, the person at the table was President Trump that he was talking about. But think about that for a second. In the State Department, they had a department that was, their whole purpose was to keep tabs on you, the American citizen. And not just President Trump, by the way. I mean, a lot of different people, like you and I, Bill. Seriously. So, anyway, it'll be interesting to see. Pam Bondi was making some news yesterday, too. In case you haven't heard, she was touring a fentanyl operation. Listen to this.
Seeing that pill press should frighten every American. I am terrified after seeing it because it shows how fast you can manufacture and make these pills.
So during our tour, we saw where fentanyl is made, Trace, for research purposes. Also, areas where to learn it came from originally. The DEA says that fentanyl is 50 times more potent than heroin. According to CDC data, overdose deaths, the leading cause of death for Americans between 18 and 44. The precursor chemicals, Trace, typically come from China. The pills largely made south of the U.S. border. The U.S. seized 22 million fentanyl pills and 3,000 pounds, a little bit more of that, of powder. That's just this year. That's enough to potentially kill over 119 million people.
119 million people saved because of the Trump administration. But for the most part, the media goes, nothing. It just whistles by the whole thing. No, nothing to see here. Just keep moving along. Hey, I want to remind you that if you have a few moments, please visit our gift shop on our website, okay? It's rightsideshop.com, rightsideshop.com. Got everything for you. Got hats, got glasses, got mugs, got T-shirts, got Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. A delicious, a perfect blend of all the finest coffee beans. The great way to start your morning is with a cup of Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. You can get it right there. And you order it, and you'll have it before you know it. You can have your friends over who are liberals and give them a cup of Right Side Coffee. That'll drive them nuts. Don't tell them what it is till they've had a few mouthfuls, and then watch them gag. No, I'm just kidding.
I could officially attest to Right Side Coffee. You see, I've had coffee from coast to coast, yes. I've traveled from east to west, west to east, north to south, and crisscrossed all this great literally, I have. And I've been overseas, too. And you know what?
What?
Right Side is the only side when it comes to coffee.
And, you know, we are the only coffee company that employs those internationally renowned singers, those performers from across the border who risk life and limb floating on their inflatable in the darkness of night to get across the Rio Grande to be here to sing this song.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Juan Jose and the Border Crossers. Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee. So, Bill, fentanyl, 119 million people saved. That's a serious number. That really is.
Yeah.
And nobody gives Trump any credit for that. It's like, so what? Biden didn't do that.
They'll ignore it. You know, all they want to do is, if they can take something, twist it, Miss Melania, just make it a joke.
Yeah.
That's all they want to do. I was going to mention Neil Young.
Mm-hmm.
He's like doing this tour now, just hate. I mean, if you take a picture of him and say, there's the face of your democracy to the left, because this is an evil old man. But he did this song called Roll On. He's done this thing before. It almost sounded like he's plagiarizing where he's got this land is your land, this land is my land, the melody of the song. But it's called Roll On. But one of the lines in it it cranks up right at the front. If you're a fascist, get a Tesla. It's electric. It don't matter. It's followed by, if you're a Democrat, taste your freedom. Get whatever you want. Taste your freedom. Now, and then it does a shout out to China, and a shout out to China. China's way ahead. They're making clean cars. Come on, GM. Come on, Ford.
Well, let me just tell you, my own humble opinion, he's been a fathead.
He's an idiot.
He's been a fathead for 50 years. I think he's from Canada, too, by the way. I think he was born in Canada. He may be an American citizen now, but...
he should go back to Canada.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I mean, people are actually downloading the song and buying the song. It's a piece of crap, but he's done this since, the George W. Bush, actually Herbert Walker Bush, whatever, George,
Well, I mean, I go back to his Southern days, and I used to think, yeah, can that guy carry a tune? I mean, he's singing Southern Man.
He was the Ernest Tubb of rock and roll. Ernest Tubb was, I'm walking the floor. He couldn't
find that note. Yes.
Yeah, so he's, and it's like, oh,
the
God,
roller coaster of folk singers.
Yeah. Neil does that too. I just realized that he sits there and he plays that grunge. It kind of covers it up, and it sounds like it's all part of the plan, but he's probably tone deaf. He can't hear a damn thing, so he's all over.
Well, speaking of all over, we're almost all over. I wanted to point out that before we go, that House Minority Leader, you see this? Hakeem Jeffries is apparently, he's figuring out that maybe allowing his Democratic counterparts to go down to El Salvador may not be a good move for the party because they're going down in support of criminals. maybe that's not a wise thing, so he's telling them to maybe knock that
quietly
off. Knock that off for a while,
He's trying to quietly do it, but the media picks up on it. Not the left media, the right media. And see, there's a problem there because how many truly conservative? Well, first off, I guess I should say, how many just right down the middle, mainstream, no opinion media sources are there? I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Now, how many right-leaning sources are there? I can think of maybe 3.
Yeah.
4 at the best. How many, let's slam Trump, left-leaning, but we carry a mainstream label news sources are there?
Dozens.
There's dozens.
Yeah.
Plus the truly left-leanings, the Huffman, what is it, the Huffman Post or whatever it's
Huffington.
Yeah, Huffington Post.
Yeah.
The Independent and all of those. Yeah, the Atlantic, those are all lefties. And then you got the NBCs, the CBSs, the ABCs, the MSNBC, the CNNs. You guys control all the news.
Right. A couple of pieces of news you probably haven't heard.
Mm-hmm.
During the Black Lives Matter situation,
yeah,
there was a picture, you may have seen it, of a bunch of legitimate FBI agents in their vests with their FBI badge, lettering on the vests, taking a knee for the Black Lives Matter movement. And these were
Why?
And these were not minority agents. These were like woke agents, all right? Well, they did that. I saw the picture. I remember it. And I kept thinking even back then, that doesn't seem right. Those are supposed to be neutral arbiters. Those are supposed to be people who, when they were wearing that vest and those letters, are supposed to be nonpartisan, neutral, not taking a knee for anything. Well, I wasn't the only person who felt that way. Now those very agents who took a knee have all been demoted. They've all been demoted.
Too bad.
Kash Patel said, that wasn't a good move. It wasn't a good look for our agency. You should not have done that. That was poor judgment, poor thinking. You really don't deserve those promotions you got, so back you go. They've been demoted. Also, this was interesting. The Trump administration, I think Marco Rubio reported this, in the first 100 days, 4,000 foreign students had their visas revoked. And you're saying, well, that seems unjust. That seems unfair. Those were students. No, they came here with some sort of criminal background and didn't report it. Now think about it for a second. There were 4,000 foreign students in this country who had a criminal record in our country with visas, and they didn't report that. So they, on a second look, they found it, and back they went. That's about it for me, my friend. I'm done. Anything else you want to add before we wrap this thing up?
One story I'll have to look into because it just came up, but apparently it's news that it was CNN where they were doing some kind of thing. A shouting match erupts on CNN after Sir Michael Singleton shuts down Ana Navarro's identity lecture over Trump's immigration policies. Apparently, they got into a shouting match against each other and had to cut to commercial.
Well, isn't that special?
Yeah, I got to see that.
Well,
I
did
love
you
it.
hear? Sotomayor cut off, who was it? The justice that couldn't describe what a woman was. I can't think of her name, but two Democratic liberal Supreme Court justices kind of cut each other off. They had a testy moment in the courtroom. So maybe there's some dissension amongst the ranks of the Democrats right now. Maybe they're not all walking as unified as they used to.
Well, there are good Democrats, but you were infiltrated because it was a party that was chosen as ripe for the pickings. And I think it became more ripe during the Clinton administration, where do anything, everything, say what you want to say. Just the goal is get elected. Doesn't matter if it's true or not. Just say what you need to say. And that goes back to, what was it, James Carville. You know, he was brilliant how he manipulated and did things, but he was evil at the same time. And now he's just an old man. You can see the evil oozing out of his pores. But there are good people out there that have some core values, and now they're caught in the crosshairs of their own party. I would tell them that they need to come forward and say they're not suicidal.
Yeah.
Because
hey, you got to pay attention, by the way, to James O'Keefe's story. You got to worry for a guy like that, you know. Speaking of suicidal.
Because something has happened to where he feels, you know, that he might have. Yeah, you know, it's like walking, you know, walking into a store that you always go into right in the middle of a robbery. And, you know, one of the crooks turns around with their gun and you're sitting there going, I made a mistake. Wrong store. No, you stay right where you are. You know, it's like, I'm not suicidal.
Well, let's hope that he's misjudged and everything's okay. Let's hope it's not the situation that he thinks it is. It was dangerous enough for him to actually make a video and post it. That's saying that he thinks he's in dire straits, as they would say.
Because they've proven they can get, if they want to get to you, they can get to you. Even Trump, with all of his security, and you saw how lax it was in Butler.
Awful.
They got to him. If not for the grace of God, I said it. If not for the grace of God, he's alive. Because had he not turned his head for whatever reason, could have been a gnat that was going, bzzz, you know, could have been anything. But he turned his head, and that split second, it winged his ear, but that was it. Otherwise,
made the difference between life and death.
And we
actually, you ever hear the story about that? He said that on one of the video screens to his right, you know, he looked out of the audience to his right. There was a video screen, and he ran a video on that screen that normally goes later in the rallies. He normally ran them later, but for some reason, he said it was appropriate to run it at that point, he thought. So out of the clear blue sky, he referred to the video and started the video, and he turned his head toward the video, and that's when he got shot. He went to subsequent rallies and would say, this video, I love this video, it saved my life. He'd say something like that. Because, again, if he had run it in its normal position on the program, he might have been killed.
So the voice in his head said cut to video.
Yep.
And because he didn't have an earpiece on for I mean, well, he might have. I don't know, but it wasn't somebody in the booth. Cut the video.
No,
Somebody's
he doesn't.
gonna try to shoot
He doesn't wear an earpiece.
No, but a voice in his head. Cut to this video. So he did. You did an impromptu thing, and it saved his life. The Dems go, oh no. Well, if you're saying, oh no, he can't have a revelation moment, a life transforming moment. When you're humbled to the fact that there is somebody above you, God.
Yeah.
Then you're saying you're not Catholic, you're not Christian, you're not any kind of religion because you don't believe. You believe in yourself. That's all you believe in, and how dare you come out and claim that we're narcissists, Nazis, and everything else.
Bill.
Because all you believe in is you and your agenda.
And I'm hearing a voice in my head right now saying it's time to wrap this show up because we've gone way too long, and it's time.
Well, I'm hearing a voice too, but it's my stomach grumbling. So it's probably a good time.
Yes. So without any further ado, sir,
I will just take us out of here. I've got the controls. I got the stick in my hand. I'm pulling the yoke back, and we're taking off and saying, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.